your director, Jesse Rudoy.
Thanks. Thank you. So many country fans in Long Island, huh?
It's partly country, but it's also, if there's an award for human spirit, I think this is the Human Spirit Award.
Yeah. Thanks.
Just really, really moving and really impressive piece of work. Those two are something else. So how did you get onto this story? You're a guy from Brooklyn who likes country music. When did you first get on to Dusty and Stones?
Well, no, I didn't like country music. I didn't know anything about country music, but I had a lifelong, fraught, tortured relationship with music. My background and my musical sort of experience is actually in DJing and electronic music.
Take it down a little bit. Take it down a little bit from your mouth.
Take it down, yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay? Okay. In my 20s, I really wanted to have a career in electronic music, and most of my friends were involved in music and kind of obsessed with music. And I was always, I always sort of bristled that, music docs, obviously for commercial reasons, tend to center around, well-known musicians who are famous and who have a built-in audience, so that if you say, there's going to be a Sheryl Crow documentary, then people are going to come because it's Sheryl Crow. But like the format tends to be looking back on the career of a musician who's already made it. But my experience with music and the experience of 99.9% of musicians is staying awake at night and wondering if their art is ever going to reach anyone, if they'll ever find a way with, that's sustainable and dignified to be a musician in the world, and you're always making compromises or sort of, readjusting the goalposts for what your vision of your life as a musician is. So I wanted to tell a story like that about a musician that was looking forward, wondering if they were going to take the first steps towards recognition and success and sustainability. And I just in my mind, I was like, I wonder if there are country music singers outside the United States who dream of being country stars, because that would be, what a crazy mountain to climb that would be, right? Because we, even if you don't, like me knowing nothing about country music, I knew that country music is white America's music, or it's, gatekept as white America's music. And I had no idea what I would find, but I was just like, I want to find a country singer outside the US who's dreaming of, fame and success in this genre. So I just started looking around on the internet and immediately was struck by there are country singers everywhere. They're all over the world, as you saw a little bit in the film, but also just, per my sort of I wonder, it'd be so crazy to be a country musician outside the United States. It was as if all the country musicians I was finding had internalized that sort of cultural dissonance about what it would mean to be a country singer, because if they were in France or Poland or Norway, wherever they were, to generalize, all these foreign country singers were sort of cosplaying as Americans. They were singing in Southern American accents and sort of obfuscating where they were from, and maybe we're not in Norway, maybe we're in Texas, you don't know, because they would want to be perceived as authentically country. And so it gave this genre of foreign country music a sort of goofy feel, not to sound mean, but that's how it felt. It didn't feel like serious music. Sorry, that sounds really mean, but that's how it felt. And then one day I just clicked. In my search, as I was searching, I clicked on this link that was just posted with the cryptic title "African Country Music," and it was that music video that you see briefly at the beginning of this film. And within 10 seconds of watching it and hearing the music, I was like, okay, these guys are different. Whoever they are, because the video just said African country music. I didn't know who they were. I was like, it was clear that they were very comfortable being themselves within country music, and that they were, they're capable of sounding like Southern Americans and, doing that accent as you saw in the film if they want to, but they were, using country music to show you exactly who they were, where they're from, and it just had such a different feel and ethos to it. And so without even having spoken with them or knowing anything about it, I was like, whatever these guys' relationship to this genre of music it is much more personal and intimate than anything I've been finding. So I figured that they would have a pretty cool story to tell, and then, you know, that bore out in the making of the film.
Well, it certainly did, but I mean, so you're a filmmaker. You wanted to be involved in electronic music, but you were a filmmaker all along. You wanted to make a documentary.
No, I was like, you know, doing sort of low-level stuff in like reality television, thinking of it as my day job. I was working in podcasting at the time, you know, sort of being like, okay, maybe music's not going to work out. But no, this was my first film.
Well, it's sort of incredible. So,
Thanks.
So once you hit on them, I mean, we have so many things to deal with here. You getting to Africa, you getting the financing to make this film, getting to Africa and getting their story. I don't think it happened in real time, or maybe it happened in real time that they got the invitation to go to the Texas Music Awards.
No, that actually, so I initially started filming this very traditional, well, I had interviewed them, I had Skyped with them, and I was like, oh my God, these guys are amazing. I have the beginning of an amazing story without knowing what the middle or end would be. And I had even maybe conceived of this as like a This American Life episode, because I was working in podcasting at the time, so I was like, oh, maybe it's like a podcast or something. And then they posted on their Facebook one day something like look, watch the space, news about Texas or something. And I was like, guys, what's going on? Like, and they told me, and so initially I had started shooting this very traditional music doc. Like, I went and got interviews. I, you know, was searching high and low for all the archival I could get, like family photos and any, you know, there wasn't a lot, but there was some really cool archival of like old sort of Swazi TV shows that they had done, and like appearances. So I was gonna sort of tell the story that, you know, through interviews, that this thing had happened, you know, here are these guys that had gotten this invitation, and then we would go to the US and follow them, and that would, but once we did go to the US and follow them, I realized that we had this story that like had unfolded, you know, basically like a narrative film where we had been flies on the wall for so much that had happened in real time, and all these like highs and lows. And so when I thought about relying on interviews and stuff, I was like, oh, it's gonna slow us down, and we just have to embrace this sort of like, you know, fly on the wall verite narrative style of filmmaking. And so we didn't recreate that moment. I just I looked at the footage I had and sort of asked. I was like, how did you guys find out about the U.S. thing? And sort of repurposed, you know, moments of them looking at their computers, and then also we had gotten there so quickly after the news that we were capturing all these media performances, these media appearances, where they were sort of explaining to the local media what was going to happen in Texas and all that. So it all felt very immediate. But yeah, if there's one thing that's maybe a bit, you know, not as it unfolded, it's that. But it was a stylistic choice to.
But you were already in Africa, and you were already getting footage in Africa.
At that precise moment that they no,
not when it happened, but I'm saying you had gone to Africa.
Oh yeah. I mean, we were there, you know, within a few weeks after that. You know, I saw that they were going to Texas, because then I knew that the story with the good beginning was going to have, you know, a middle and an end if they were going to go.
The African footage was so telling, because the empty halls they're playing in with their cowboy hats. I was wondering throughout, where do you get a cowboy hat in Swaziland? Yeah. But they weren't the only ones with cowboy hats. The 5 people in the audience for their shows had cowboy hats.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The country music culture, that non-existent. And I was when I saw the email saying please come to the Country Music Awards, and I was like, International Texas Music Awards, this is not going to be a good thing. Like they think
Really?
it's going to be. Oh, no, I was like so suspicious to begin with. And then that climactic moment of going to Nashville, which was just so moving and so stunning. The way they were embraced by those musicians and the professionalism of those musicians and what it did to their music. And you could see the effect on them. That was just so stunning. And then the follow-up to that, to get to the Country Music Awards.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. That was so disheartening. But again, Human Spirit Award, the way that they sort of said, and that disinterested backup band, oh my God, that was just so cruel and bad. But then they just kept rocking with everything. They rolled with every punch. So, but to be able to capture that, and the fly on the wall aspect, and this is true for all documentaries, as you know. Getting a camera in the room for some of the things that you did, for the bar scene when they were embraced by the local people in the bar. And to what degree is that happening because there's a camera crew following them around, and to what degree is that happening because it's just going to happen anyway?
Right.
But still, you captured it. So,
sure.
And they never got hung over. How did that happen?
Oh, everyone was hungover. I mean, if they were drinking in front of the camera, the crew was having drinks behind the camera, and the day after was a little slow getting started.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah.
So you started at a low point. They'd already been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah,
and playing to empty houses for 10 years.
A long time, yeah.
And which was, a really tough way to pay their dues. But so how did they get the trip financed? Did you help them getting financing for the trip to Texas? How did that all work out?
So part of the agreement was, they had a lot of community support and they fundraised via their community, but because we were asking for permission to film them, because we were relying on their IP, using their music, we did, in consultation with some more experienced doc producers, it's like you don't want to, we didn't want to put money in, hand the money and say, like, will you do the film? But we said, if we do, if you do this, we'll contribute X amount to the film. So we can to the trip. So we contributed to the journey, like a predetermined amount, in exchange for the the right to film and the right to the music, which we felt was a good way of not making convincing them to do the film if they weren't interested in doing it, but also ensuring that we were. Obviously, if you're using someone's music, you have to compensate them for their music.
Absolutely,
so.
And it makes the story. I mean, I don't know if they could have financed it without the film to do it, but whatever the case was, the fact is you had to follow the story. So and it's good that your focus was on them, because if your focus was on the Texas International Music Awards, it'd be another film altogether.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they have a story to tell too. Someone else, any aspiring documentary filmmakers, it's still happening. So you guys should go down there.
Yeah. So and at the end, the footage at the end, when they're back in Swaziland and they're going around with the award, and now they're getting much better turnout at their concerts. So. And you said you had some information about what had happened to them, interesting news, what had happened to Dusty and Stones since the film.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
can you tell us?
Yeah. So, there's two really big things. One of the really good ones is that Stones had a baby, who's now 3. She's not a baby anymore. But that was just such a great personal development. And he's so into being a dad. And I was just out there with my family. Actually, we showed the film for the first time in Swaziland. So it was amazing for my family to go and be with Dusty and Stones and their family. And we showed the film in this amazing evening. But spending time with him and his daughter was really magical. And
so this was recently?
That we were there. That he had this.
Yeah. You were there and
this was 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
2 weeks and screened the film 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we screened the film 2 weeks ago.
What kind of a house did you have?
Packed. Amazing. Unbelievable.
What was the venue?
It's actually in the film. One of the places that you're seeing them in that final montage that's like full of people. It's a place called House on Fire, and they have like an annual like proper sort of music, like African music festival where artists from all over Africa come, and the world really, not just Africa, come to. I should say Swaziland is now called Eswatini. In 2019, the country changed its name. So it's like the biggest music festival in Eswatini, and artists come. So you saw them performing there, but we showed the film in that venue, and Dusty and Stones performed after, and it was...
Wow, that's incredible.
We had a packed house.
Will there be chances for them to see the film again in Swaziland?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I mean, they have the link to the film, so whoever they want to show it. It's hard. There's not really like I don't know. There's like 2 movie theaters in the entire country of Swaziland. So it's like, but the really big development is that at the end of September, Dusty and Stones performed at the Grand Ole Opry, which.
All right.
Yeah. Which it sounds like you guys know that's like the biggest. It's like the biggest honor,
of course,
in country music. So they're not country stars yet. It's like they're not astronauts, but they went to space.
Okay,
they really did it, and it was unbelievable. And it was a really amazing. It was the film. Someone who was working for the Opry saw the film when it played in Atlanta, and they reached out and they were like, "Has the Opry seen this?" And I was like, "No." So the film kind of made its way through the C-suite of the Grand Ole Opry, and then they were like, "We want these guys to come." And
so that leads to another question. So when they got to the States, or before they got to the States, how did they get hooked up with that music producer in Nashville? How did that happen?
So before the Texas thing happened, when I had first maybe conceived of this as a This American Life episode, or like a podcast, I was very acutely aware that I didn't know anything about country music, and I was sensitive to the fact that what may have been moving me as a filmmaker, someone who knew anything about country music would have said, "No, you've gotten swept up in something that's not actually authentic or good country music." I needed a sort of gut check for my own. I was acutely aware of how little I knew, and I was mentioning this to a friend who had worked a bit in Nashville, and he just sent some of the stuff to Robert Ellis Orrell, that producer, and he said, "Bob really wants to talk to you about this." So I get on a call with Bob, and he's like, this is amazing. This is
real deal.
This is. I remember I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he said, "What you hear on the radio today that's billed as country music has gotten so far from what this genre was at its inception, and what the sort of initial impetus of people living, in rural lives." When they decided to make music about their lives, like what that was really about. Like what you hear now and what's called country is so far from that. What these guys are doing is so close to that original impetus and inspiration. And he's like, if they're ever in the US, you have to let me know. So when the Texas thing was clicking in, I hadn't spoken to this guy maybe in like a year and a half or 2. I wasn't sure what he was going to think, but I was like, "Hey, do you remember?" He's like, yes. And he put the session together, and he's like, let's bring them to Nashville, and he set that up, and I, this has come up in other Q&As, but he doesn't own, Dusty and Stones own that music; those are their masters. Bob has since retired from the country music industry, so he really just wanted to get that music recorded to sort of hear it made and hear it have the support and the resource and the talent that it deserved. So that was just like a magical thing. And it's great. I mean, you can imagine it would be I don't know what the movie would have been without the Nashville part.
Well, it was a climactic moment for sure, and an emotional, real cathartic moment for them and for us as well, I believe. And is that ever likely to be distributed in any way?
I mean, all that music's on Spotify. So if you have Spotify,
I gotta get it. I gotta get it.
Dusty and Spoon,
The River's an
Spotify.
amazing song.
Yeah,
The
it's
River's
on
just
there.
Incredible.
I mean, they actually recorded a third song in that session. I mean, those musicians, you know, they heard those songs once and really just,
It was incredible.
you know, they recorded 3 songs in like 2 hours, you know, and like, so there's even a third song that's not even in the movie that they recorded. But yeah, Dusty and Spoons on Spotify.
That's so great. So I mean, and the beginning of the film, when you talk about how they're close to the original genre of country music, and I guess maybe it's Dusty talking, I'm not sure, but I think it is, and he says, there's a Dolly Parton song, My Tennessee Mountain Home, and that's the story of my life, and it's like, wait a minute, that's the cognitive dissonance here. You know, My Tennessee Mountain Home and so, but the way the movie plays out, it's obviously the case. You know, that's
100%,
100%, and which is so weird because it's Swaziland. But so we have a chance for the audience to ask some questions here. So what do we have? We have a microphone right over here. Star, there's a microphone coming your way. Hang on.
I just want to say I'm blown away by your first film,
Thanks.
so to speak. Blown away. And
Thanks.
what you gave us, which is so distinctive of this genre of documentary films, is an intimate relationship with people. And it's throughout all of these films, this intimacy that's not a fictional intimacy like a movie, but a real one. So, of course, I wanted to know how you always seemed the fly on the wall, and like scenes with them dancing after, like going into a really great bar and meeting those people there and dancing with them, and then being outside and dancing with joy, and you know, in a street, and then being their hotel room, and then being with their grandmother, and then being with the cool Swazi woman who's such a good country and western singer herself.
Yeah.
And you were in all those places. Did you only have a small crew? Was it only you? Was it how did you fashion that intimacy?
That's a great question, and you know, I think that's what I'm most proud of in the film is the word I use exactly is the intimacy of it, because I do think we got really close to showing, you know, who these guys are, and we're really kind of up in their world and capturing these things. So thank you for asking that. I think, yeah, crew size is a huge consideration, and something I learned along the way too. Like, you know, by the end, I was like always conscious of shooting with the bare minimum that I thought I could get away with. Which in some instances, and I'm sure some people would tell you not to do this, was shooting without a dedicated sound person. You see like you see a film crew, there's often like a sound person with a big imposing boom mic.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, your post sound mixer who's editing it is gonna want that boom there, for obvious reasons. But I do think people having conversations and always having a mic, you know, it's something you have to consider, and it's something that I think I'm glad that in key moments we did not have. Not because you want people to forget that they're being filmed, because I think you always want people, you know, in terms of like consent and in terms of people being aware that what they're doing, you know, may live forever or be seen on a big screen. You know, you don't want people to forget that they're being filmed, but you want people to feel comfortable that they're being filmed, and I do think So crew size was just a big consideration, but also, you know, it's time, and you know, one thing that I will say is like my first jobs in documentary, like I mentioned, reality or sort of true crime TV, were based on sort of like an economic and, you know, like an economically expedient schedule that adhered to the needs of like a production company, which meant like you were interviewing people who you'd ask to come sit down and sort of spill the guts of their, you know, darkest moments or their, you know, most intimate moments, and then say, "Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming by. We'll let you know when this is going to air." And like, so initially, I remember when I was you know, I had been conditioned to just always be like going and packing as much as I could in, meeting people, filming with them, and then moving on to the next thing. And then obviously I realized like that's not, you know, you if you want real intimacy or if you want people to feel comfortable, you really have to invest in time. And like a day hanging out with the protagonists of your film or the people you're going to film with, where maybe you're going and getting lunch, you're chilling at their house, you're picking up the camera, filming a little bit, putting it down, and really being with them without sort of conveying any time pressure or need to like move on to the next thing, it really kind of pays in dividends in terms of intimacy. And so I think by the end of the process, I was spending, you know, maybe for 6 hours that I would spend with Dusty and Stones, we'd film for an hour and a half or 2, and being comfortable with that. And like, you know, again, a production company, you know, would be like, don't, we need to.
Well, you can't afford to do that.
You know, but we, with, you know, me and 2 other people, a bare bones crew. So that investment, you know, that time investment, I would say is really important for filmmaking like this. And then the third thing I would say is like, we were on a road trip, you know, and like documentary filmmaking can be, you're kind of invading someone's reality. Like if I were to film you at your job, you know, it would not feel like a normal day at your job. Everyone would be like, you know, oh, there's a camera here. We're going to try to act like it's a normal day. But because we collectively, Dusty and Stones and the film crew, were on this trip in new places, experiencing new things, meeting new people that none of us had before, it created this kind of cool, like alternate, I don't want to say alternate reality because it was reality, but this world of this trip where every day we were getting up and experiencing these crazy, you know, twists and turns of this story, but that the camera was, you know, kind of always rolling and that they were always wearing mics.
Well, you're all going through it together.
We were all going through it together, and there was no sense of normalcy. So it was just like, yeah, the cameras are always rolling, and you know what I mean? I think if it had all been in their universe and we had never ventured outside, like into the U.S., we actually wouldn't have achieved such crazy fly-on-the-wall intimacy, because there would have been constant awareness that like what was happening was out of the norm, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think those answers I think are 100% on the money, and I think there's one other thing to consider, which is that all documentary filmmakers deal with this, which is the anthropological problem of once you study people, the fact of studying them makes it different from what it was to begin with. And I think in addition to the things that you mentioned, there's also the fact of the people that you're dealing with and their authenticity. And because of what you did with the minimal crew, what you did with the other things, made that authenticity because of who they are. They were themselves throughout, and it was without any posing for the camera, without acting differently for the camera, they were themselves. And I think that goes to the heart of the film. And I'm sorry we don't have more time for more questions, but thank you so much for bringing us this film.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And introducing us to Dustin's.